The war was over. At least that was what the galaxy believed. Alien broadcasts showed human warships drifting in victory above the burning ruins of the enemy's last fortress. The Galactic Council congratulated Earth. The great fleets were ordered to stand down. Soldiers dreamed of going home. But for Commander Rylan, peace was only a lie told to make people feel safe. He stood on the bridge of the horizon's edge, staring at the black screen in front of him. The battle was finished. Only hours ago, wreckage still floated in space like frozen ghosts. Debris fields stretched for hundreds of kilometers. But in the middle of the silence, a faint signal had come through. It wasn't a distress call. It wasn't a surrender. It was a whisper sequence of numbers hidden inside an enemy transmission. Code was human. Ryland's hands tightened on the console. There was only one explanation. Someone had been working with the enemy. And not just any traitor, someone deep inside humanity's war effort. Lock this down, Ryland told his communications officer. No one else sees this until I say yes, sir. The coordinates hidden in the signal pointed to deep, uncharted space beyond any human colony, beyond even the mapped lanes of the galaxy. That alone was strange. But then the data revealed something else. It contained a name, human name. One Rylan had seen before, long ago. Secret intelligence reports. Captain Elias Varen. Varen had been a fleet hero once, but 5 years ago, he disappeared during a mission and was declared dead. Now his name was hidden in an enemy signal. Along with a location, that was no coincidence. Rylan knew what this meant. The war had ended, but the fight was not over. This was something far darker. An enemy within. The bridge was quiet, except for the faint hum of the ship's systems. Outside, hulks of alien warships spun slowly in the void. The crew looked tired, worn from months of fighting. They wanted to believe it was all over. Rylan couldn't give them that. Commander, the tactical officer, said, "High Command is calling. They want our victory report." Rylan didn't answer right away. He was still staring at the coordinates. He could almost feel them pulling at him like a hook buried in his mind. Finally, he spoke. "Patch it through," he said. The image of Admiral Stain appeared on the main display. The old man's uniform was crisp, his expression sharp. "Rylan, congratulations. The war is over. I'm ordering you and your crew back to Earth for debriefing." "With respect, Admiral," Rylan said. "We can't go home yet." Stain's eyes narrowed. "Explain." Rylan told him about the signal, the coordinates, and the name. Stain's face didn't change, but his fingers tapped once on the desk in front of him. "Are you certain?" "Yes, sir. 100%. There was a long pause. Then the Admiral leaned forward. "This doesn't leave your ship. No transmissions, no written records. You will investigate quietly. If what you say is true, we're dealing with something worse than the war we just fought." Rylan nodded. "Understood." The Admiral's voice dropped lower. "Commander, Captain Varen truly turned against us. I don't want him captured. I want him erased." The screen went dark. The crew didn't ask questions when the horizon's edge changed course. They were loyal to Rylan, and they had learned during the war that sometimes it was better not to know everything. The new heading took them toward the edge of known space. Stars grew thin out here, scattered like distant sparks. Days passed in, the cold silence of the void. The ship's engines hummed steadily. Each crew member kept busy, but Rylan could feel the tension growing. No one knew where they were going, and no one had seen the commander leave his cabin. In truth, Rylan spent hours going over old files on Varen. The man had been brilliant, unpredictable, dangerous. He'd won battles that should have been impossible. But he'd also made decisions that got people killed. And then, one day, he'd vanished. When they finally reached the coordinates, the space ahead was empty, or so it seemed. Rylan ordered a full sensor sweep. At first, nothing. Then, a faint distortion shimmered against the darkness. It wasn't natural. "Cloaking field," the science officer muttered. Rylan's jaw tightened. "Bring us in slowly." As they approached, the distortion peeled away to reveal a massive station black metal, jagged, unlike any human design. It floated inside the shadow of a dead star, its surface covered in alien weapons. But Ryland saw human markings on its hull. The Traitors hadn't just fled Dade, built something here. Then the station's lights came alive. Multiple ships began to undock. Human ships. The bridge went silent. Every crew member stared at the sight ships they recognized. Models from Earth's own fleets now bearing alien markings. "They're hailing us," the comms officer said. Ryland didn't answer right away. His mind was racing. This was proof, beyond doubt, that the enemy had been working with humans all along. The war had ended, but these traitors were still out here, armed and ready. "Put them through," Ryland said. The screen flickered, and there he was, Captain Elias Varen. His face looked older, harder, but his eyes still had the same sharp glint. "Well," Varen said with a faint smile, "they sent you. I'm almost honored." "You betrayed us," Ryland said. Varen chuckled. "Betrayal? No, Commander. I saved us. The war you fought was just the beginning. The real danger is still coming. You're on the wrong side." "Wrong side?" Ryland's voice was cold. "The wrong side doesn't burn human colonies and sell our people to alien executioners." Varen's smile faded. "Sometimes the future demands a few sacrifices. I've seen what's coming, Ryland. Earth won't survive unless it changes. I'm just helping that change happen faster." Ryland's hand rested on the arm of his chair. "You're going to surrender, Varen. Now." Varen laughed softly. "You can try to take me, but I'm not alone." The transmission ended, and the enemy ships lit their drives. Weapons powered up. The space between the horizon's edge and the station began to glow with targeting lasers. "Commander," the tactical officer said, "they're moving to engage." Ryland's heart was steady. His mission had just become clear. The war had ended, but the hunt had begun. "Battle stations," he ordered. "Target their engines, so no one gets away." In the darkness beyond the dead star, human warships turned their guns on each other. The galaxy thought peace had come. But for Ryland and his crew, peace was a dream that had died the moment the last battle ended. And somewhere, right deep inside, Ryland knew this was only the start. The wreckage of Varen's fleet still burned behind them, but Commander Ryland knew this was no victory. In the chaos of the fight, 3 traitor ships had escaped into deep space. He didn't know where they were going, but he knew they carried vital information, names, locations, and the next steps in the traitor network's plan. He stood at the bridge window, the stars drifting slowly past. His mind replayed the short conversation with Varen. The man's words were still sharp in his head. "You're on the wrong side." Ryland didn't believe him, but the conviction in Varen's voice was dangerous. Dangerous enough to turn others against Earth. The ship's comms crackled. "Commander," the communications officer said, "we've picked up a signal trail. One of the traitor ships is broadcasting a disguised beacon. Probably thinks it's hidden, but we've got it." Ryland's eyes narrowed. "Where?" The officer pulled up a star map. A small red icon blinked far from any major trade lane, near a dying red dwarf star. Ryland studied it for a long moment, set a course, full speed. 2 days later, the horizon's edge slid silently into the shadow of the star. Its light was weak, almost fading to darkness, painting the traitor ship ahead in dull red. It was a corvette's maul, fast, built for smuggling runs. Ryland could see scorch marks on its hull from the previous battle. The traitors had run here to hide, not to fight. "Sir, their drives are cold," the tactical officer reported. "They're drifting." "Perfect," Ryland said. "We'll take them alive." The boarding team moved quickly. Black armored suits sealed tight, rifles ready, they crossed the short distance between ships in a magnetic boarding tube. The traitor ship. The air smelled of burnt metal and desperation. Ryland led the way through narrow corridors, till they reached the control room. 3 crew members were there, 2 aliens and 1 human. The human froze when he saw Ryland. "Drop your weapons," Ryland ordered. The aliens obeyed instantly, hands raised. But the human, a thin man with pale eyes, shook his head slowly. "Don't understand, Commander. We're the ones trying to save Earth." Ryland didn't waste time. "Save it for the brig," he motioned to his Marines. Restrain him. Back aboard the Horizon's Edge, the prisoner sat in the interrogation room. His name was Lennox Drave, a former fleet logistics officer. His record was clean until 2 years ago when he went missing during a convoy run. Ryland stepped inside. The door slid shut behind him. "Drave," Ryland said, sitting across the table, "you worked for the fleet? You know the penalty for treason?" Drave smiled faintly. "Treason? No. I chose the only side that matters, the one that survives." "You think joining Varen's Traitors will save you?" Ryland asked. "It's not about me," Drave said. Quietly, "It's about Earth. About the billions of people who have no idea what's coming." Ryland leaned forward. "What is coming?" Drave's pale eyes met his. "The war you fought was nothing. The real enemy is already here. Vaden is the only one preparing for them." Ryland slammed his hand on the table. "Name's Drave." Now, Drave hesitated. Then, slowly he said, "You'll find your answers in the free hubs." The free hubs were a chain of massive trade stations scattered across neutral space. They were independent, lawless, and a perfect hiding place for fugitives. Drave's voice dropped lower. "There's someone there, a merchant named Korok Vesh. He handles special cargo, including weapons meant for your enemies. Find him, and you'll understand." Hours later, the Horizon's Edge was on the move again. Ryland stood in the war room with his officers, the holographic map casting pale light over their faces. Free hubs are crawling with bounty hunters, smugglers, and mercenaries, the intelligence officer warned. "If Varen's network has agents there, they'll have eyes everywhere," Good Ryland said. "Let them see us. I want Vesh to know we're coming." When the Horizon's Edge dropped out of FTL near the first free hub, the station's bulk filled the viewport. It was a metal giant, hundreds of spires rising into the void, each one buzzing with small ships coming and going. The docking bay was chaos Traitors, shouting over the roar of engines, crates being moved by alien loaders, music from a dozen worlds, clashing in the air. Ryland and a small team stepped into the crowd, wearing plain travel gear instead of uniforms. It didn't take long to find trouble. A group of rough-looking mercenaries blocked their path, eyes narrowing at the sight of humans. One, a tall insectoid with razor-like forearms, stepped forward. "You're a long way from Earth, soldier." "Just passing through," Ryland said calmly. The insectoid's head tilted. "No one passes through here without paying the toll." Before Ryland could answer, one of his men moved fast, pressing a pistol under the alien's jaw. "We paid." "In advance," he said quietly. The mercenaries stepped back, letting them pass. Vesh's shop was hidden deep inside the lower levels of the station. It was dimly lit, the air thick with the smell of old fuel and ozone. Vesh himself was a short, round alien with 4 arms and a nervous smile. "Customers," Vesh said, his voice oily, "looking for something." "Rare? We're looking for you," Ryland said. The smile froze. "Me." "You supply weapons to Varen's people?" Ryland said. "We want to know where the next shipment is going." Vesh swallowed. I don't know who told you that, but they're wrong." Ryland took a step closer. "I can do this 2 ways. Vesh, talking or not talking." Vesh's eyes darted toward the back room. "You don't understand. If I tell you, they'll kill me. They won't get the chance," Ryland said flatly. Vesh's hands shook. Finally, he said, "All right. The next shipment is headed to a planet called Luriz IV, banned to humans. High security. The Traitors are meeting there." Ryland had his lead. But as they turned to leave, the shop door slid open and 3 armed figures stepped inside, 2 humans and an alien sniper. The leader smiled coldly. "Commander Ryland, Varen sends his regards." Blaster fire erupted. The fight was fast and brutal. Ryland's team dropped the alien sniper first, then moved in tight to disarm the humans. One tried to run, but Ryland caught him by the collar and slammed him against the wall. "Tell Varen," Ryland said, his voice low, "that I'm coming for him." They left the shop with Vesh in tow. The merchant was shaking, but he was alive. More importantly, he had just become their unwilling guide to Luriz IV. The war might have been over, but the hunt was just beginning. Now the trail of blood stretched all the way to a world where no human was welcome. The galactic capital was a city of light, a crown of silver towers floating in the endless dark. From orbit, it looked peaceful. From the streets, it was a place of power, money, and lies. Commander Rylan hated every part of it, the horizons. Edge had arrived under strict orders. No weapons drawn, no uniforms displayed, and no official presence. This mission was to be invisible. Vesh, the captured arms dealer, had told them something disturbing during the trip. One of Varen's highest contacts was not hiding in the shadows at all. He was walking openly in the heart of the capital, protected by law and status. The name had made Rylan pause. Counselor Dareth Kevon. Keon wasn't just some alien merchant or black market boss. He was a member of the Galactic High Council itself, one of the people who had publicly praised humanity after the war. Man trusted by hundreds of worlds. If Keon was part of Varen's network, then the rot was deeper than Rylan had imagined. The plan was simple. Rylan and two operatives would infiltrate the city undercover, locate Keon, and gather enough proof to act.
How?
But there was a problem. On the galactic capital, harming a council member was an act of war. Rylan made a wrong move. Earth could be crushed under the weight of the entire galaxy. The streets of the capital pulsed with life. Alien species of every shape and size moved through the glittering plazas. Markets sold food from 100 worlds. Sky lanes above carried sleek transports that hummed silently past the towers. Rylan moved through it all like a shadow. His team wore plain travel jackets, and their weapons were hidden under layered fabric. Their eyes scanned the crowds constantly. They reached the council district, a place of spotless walkways, guarded gates, and floating banners of gold. Keon's personal residence stood near the center, a black spire with silver accents. In ceremonial armor stood at the doors, their faces hidden behind mirrored helmets, looks untouchable. One of Rylan's operatives murmured. "No one's untouchable," Rylan said quietly. For hours they watched. Keon came and went, smiling, for public speeches, shaking hands with alien diplomats. But in between these appearances, strange visitors entered the spire-armed couriers, coded messengers, and once, a figure Rylan recognized from old intelligence photos. A human pilot who'd defected years ago. That was all the confirmation Rylan needed. "We're going in tonight," Rylan said. The capital's night was an artificial cycle. Bright towers dimmed their lights, and hover drones sprayed soft mist through the air to give the illusion of cool evening air. From above, the city looked calm. From below, in the service tunnels, was a maze of steam vents and humming power lines. Rylan's team moved silently through the tunnels until they reached the base of Keon's spire. A maintenance hatch had been left unsecured, likely for smugglers bringing in illegal goods. It was their way in. The lift carried them to the 53rd floor luxury level. Thick carpets, gold inlays, walls lined with priceless alien art. They moved down the hall, avoiding security drones by timing their steps with each drone's patrol cycle. Finally, they reached Keon's private office. Inside, the air was warm and smelled faintly of exotic spice. Holographic maps floated above the desk, showing shipping lanes across the galaxy. But these were no ordinary trade routes. They were supply lines for weapons, troop movements, and encrypted drop points. "This is it," Rylan muttered. Slipping a data spike into the terminal, the device began copying files. Lists of names appeared: politicians, smugglers, military officers, all connected to Varen's network. One name made Rylan stop, his own. For a moment, his chest went cold. Wasn't sure if it was a mistake or a trap. Either way, he pushed the thought aside and let the spike keep working. Then the sound came, a soft click of the door behind them. Rylan spun. Rifle raised. Counselor Keon stood in the doorway, smiling. His guards were nowhere in sight. "Well," Keon said, his voice calm, "I was wondering when you would arrive." Rylan didn't lower his weapon. "You're working with Varen." "I'm working for the survival of the galaxy," Keon replied. Varen sees the truth. You do not. You've been feeding him human military data? Rylan said coldly. That's treason. Keon's smile widened. Only if you believe Earth's survival depends on isolation. Threats coming will burn entire civilizations to ash. Council will do nothing. Varen will fight. Choose the side that will win. Rylan took a slow step forward. You won't live long enough to see it. Keon chuckled softly. You think you're here to take me in? You're wrong. You're here to die. The floor panels shifted under Rylan's boots. From the walls, thin metallic drones unfolded, each armed with needle-like weapons. The office's windows sealed shut with a hiss. Rylan fired first. Drones exploded in sparks, but more poured in from hidden compartments. His team moved fast, covering each other. Clearing the room while the data spike finished its job, Keon ducked behind his desk, pulling out a small pistol. He fired, the shot burning into the wall just inches from Rylan. Rylan dove forward, slamming. Keon against the desk. This ends now. Keon grinned, even as Rylan pressed a blade to his throat. It's already begun. He didn't kill him, not here, not where the law could brand Earth as the aggressor. Instead, Rylan's team triggered a blackout in the tower. Using the darkness to slip out the same way they came in, the data spike was still warm in Rylan's hand. The files inside worth more than any speech or threat. Back aboard the Horizons? Edge, the intelligence team confirmed, the worse the network was larger than they thought. Dozens of safe havens, multiple hidden fleets. In a gathering place, the coordinates pointed to a world with a molten gold sky, Lurais 4, in the moment. Rylan heard the name. He remembered what Vesh had said, banned to humans. Rylan looked at the map, then at his crew. We're going in, no matter what it takes. The war might have ended for the rest of the galaxy, but for the Horizon's Edge, it had only just begun. And now, the hunt would lead them into the most dangerous place yet where humans were not only unwelcome, but marked for death the moment they arrived. The dark of space was broken by a single flare of light, not from a weapon, not from an explosion, but from a signal, one that carried across systems. The battle was over, but the galaxy had not gone silent. Human warships floated and scattered. Formations, their hulls scorched, their numbers thinned. The smell of burning metal still filled the decks, and the weight of the dead hung heavy on every survivor's mind. The war had ended here in this forgotten sector, but the victory did not bring rest. It brought questions, Captain Juno. Vale stood at the viewing deck of the Resolute. Her eyes traced the jagged remains of the enemy flagship drifting among debris. That ship had been the heart of the alien fleet, a predator species that had hunted countless worlds. Now it was nothing more than a tomb, but something wasn't right. As the human fleet pulled survivors from the wreckage, strange signals began to appear on their scanners. They were faint, pulsing irregularly, as if someone, or something, was trying to speak in a language older than any known code. The technicians ran it through the translation arrays, but the computer returned the same message over and over. The hunt continues. Juno felt a cold knot in her stomach. The enemy leader was dead. Their forces were shattered, yet this message meant there were others out there watching. Waiting, preparing, the Fleet Council convened in the main war room. The room's hollow projection displayed a galaxy map with red blinking points marking the source of the signals. They weren't random. They formed a trail, a hunting path, leading away from the battlefield and deeper into uncharted space. This is not a retreat, Admiral Kane said, his voice low. This is an invitation. No one spoke. The meaning was clear. The enemy wanted them to follow. But why? Some believed it was a trap. Others thought it was the enemy's way of luring the strongest humans away from the core worlds. But Juno suspected something darker, that the enemy was not fleeing at all, but leading them to the rest of their kind. The decision was made in silence. A small task force would follow the signal, moving fast and quiet. Officially, they called it a recon mission. Unofficially, it was a hunt of their own. Hours later, the Resolute and 4 escort ships detached from the main fleet and slipped into the black. Their engines ran on low burn, their transmissions silent. The trail led them past the edges of map space, where stars thinned and darkness grew deeper. Days turned to weeks. The further they went, the stranger the signals became. The pattern shifted, almost as if it were learning from their movements. Sometimes it would vanish entirely, only to reappear stronger and closer. The crew began to feel as if they weren't the hunters anymore. They were being drawn in. Then, one night cycle, the Resolute dropped out of FTL into a dead system. No planets, no asteroid belts, just a single cold star in a massive structure. Orbiting it, it wasn't a station, it wasn't a ship. It was something older, something built from black stone and alien metal, shaped like a crescent with its open ends pointing toward deep space. The signals were coming from inside, Juno ordered. The escorts to form a perimeter. The shuttle team prepared to board. The moment they crossed the threshold of the structure, every light inside their ships flickered. The air seemed to hum, and the signal, once faint and distant, roared in their ears. And then they heard a voice. Not overcomes, not in their ears, but in their minds. You ended a battle. You did not end the war. Juno froze. The voice was cold, without emotion. It spoke as if the destruction of the enemy fleet had meant nothing. The structure's walls shifted as if alive. Panels unfolded to reveal carvings, images of hunts stretching across centuries. Not of war between armies, but of predators tracking prey across the stars. And at the center of each carving, one species stood as the ultimate prize. Humans. Juno felt her blood run cold. This wasn't just a remnant of their enemies. This was the heart of something larger. A network of hunters who had been searching, waiting for the right moment. The fleet they had destroyed was not the last. It was only the first wave. She stepped closer to the carvings and saw something worse. Future hunts depicted in terrifying detail. Battles that had not yet happened. Locations in human space marked in blood-red symbols. This wasn't just a history. It was a plan. Suddenly, the hum deepened. From the open ends of the crescent structure, shapes began to emerge. Dozens of sleek, needle-like ships, their hulls as black as the void. They hadn't been hiding in another system. They'd been here all along, dormant, waiting for the humans to come to them. Admiral Kane was wrong, Juno whispered. This wasn't an invitation to hunt them. It was an invitation for them to hunt us. The structure came alive, its core glowing as the first of the hunter ships turned toward the Resolute. There would be no retreat, not without leading. These predators straight back to human space. The last battle might have ended. But here in the shadow of this alien crescent, the hunt had only just begun. The smell of smoke still lingered in the ruins of the alien capital. Charred walls stood, like black teeth against the pale sky. Rivers ran red with the dust of collapsed towers. It had been days since the last battle, yet the echoes of war refused to fade. Commander Rains walked through the shattered streets with slow, steady steps. His boots crunched over fragments of alien glass. Around him, squads of human soldiers were silent. They carried their rifles low, eyes scanning the shadows. Victory had been declared. But no one felt safe, because this was not over. The enemy had scattered into the stars, their fleet broken, their armies destroyed. But they had left something behind: assassins, shadows in the dark, killers trained. To hunt the victors, they moved without ships, without bases. They would hide among ruins, in abandoned tunnels, in forgotten worlds. And their mission was simple: kill every human leader they could find. The hunt had already begun. Rains stopped beside the remains of a great alien statue. It had once been a proud symbol of their empire, a towering figure with a sword raised high. Now it was broken in half, the head lying face down in the dust. "This isn't peace," he said quietly. "It's the next war." Lieutenant Vares, a young soldier with sharp eyes, looked at him. "Do you think they'll come for you first, sir?" Rains gave a short, humorless laugh. "They'd be foolish not to." That night, as the human camp settled into uneasy rest, the wind carried strange sounds. Not gunfire, not footsteps. Something softer, like whispers under the earth. The sentries tightened their grips on their rifles. In the ruins beyond the camp, faint blue lights flickered and vanished. Somewhere out there, it's unseen, the enemy watched them, and one of them had already crossed the perimeter. The assassin moved like a shadow through the camp. body covered in chameleon fabric that bent light. Their breathing was silent, their steps softer than the wind. They passed between guards unseen, slipping closer to the largest tent, Rains' command post. Inside, Rains studied a holographic map, marking possible escape routes the enemy might use. He didn't know the danger was only meters away, but Rains had fought long enough to trust his instincts. Something felt wrong, too still, too quiet. He reached for his sidearm, and at that exact moment, the assassin struck. A flash of movement. A blade that shimmered with alien metal. Rains blocked with his pistol, the impact jarring his arm. The assassin hissed in a language he didn't understand, lunging again. The tent erupted into chaos, guards rushing in, gunfire ripping through the air. When it was over, the assassin lay still, chameleon fabric flickering and dying. But before they breathed their last, they smiled. A cold, sharp smile that said, "This is only the beginning." Rains looked at his soldiers, "Double the guards, triple them if you have to, because they're coming, and they won't stop." Above the camp, the alien sky seemed darker than before. Some were hidden among the stars. Others were already on their way. The sun was dipping low over the war-scarred horizon, casting long shadows over the battered field. What was once green earth was now a wasteland, burnt soil, shattered machines, and broken bodies. The air still held the bitter temps of smoke and blood. The last battle had ended only hours ago, but the silence that followed was heavier than the chaos before it. Captain Rail stood at the edge of the ruins. His armor cracked, one shoulder plate missing. His helmet was tucked under his arm, revealing a face lined by exhaustion and grief. Round him, the surviving soldiers moved slowly, gathering supplies, carrying the wounded, and burying the dead. There was no cheering for victory because this didn't feel like one. The enemy had been pushed back, yes. But something about the way they retreated was wrong. He had seen it before, too clean, too planned. They hadn't been beaten, they had simply left. That meant they would be back. A gust of wind stirred the ash around his boots. From the far side of the field, a scout jogged toward him, face pale. "Captain," the scout said, catching his breath, "we found tracks. Big ones. They're heading into the mountain passes." Rail's jaw tightened. "Not a retreat," he muttered. "A regroup." He turned to look at the distant peaks, their snow-covered tips glowing orange in the dying light. The enemy wasn't gone. They were moving, hiding, preparing. And they had left something behind, something that was already pulling at the edges of his mind. He didn't know what it was yet, but he could feel it, like the cold breath of a predator waiting in the dark. In the camp, the wounded groaned, and the medics worked under makeshift tents. Sound of hammers rang out as engineers tried to patch up broken vehicles. No one dared celebrate. Even the youngest recruits, who had never seen battle before today, seemed to understand they had survived, but survival was not the same as safety. Rail walked through the camp, checking on his men. Some saluted, others simply nodded, there, eyes hollow. In the far corner, beside a stack of burned crates, a prisoner sat bound. He was one of the Anemona's strange, almost insect-like creature with dark, chitinous skin and eyes that glowed faintly in the shadows. It didn't speak, but it watched Rail closely, almost studying him. He crouched in front of it. "Where did they go?" he asked. The creature tilted its head. Its mouthparts clicked softly before it spoke in a harsh, guttural voice. "Da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da is over. The hunt begins." Before Rail could question further, the creature leaned back and closed its eyes, as if the conversation was finished. The words echoed in his mind, heavier with meaning than he wanted to admit. A hunt, not a war. That meant they weren't after territory, they were after someone, something. Night fell quickly. Fires burned low, guarded carefully so as not to give away their position. Rail couldn't sleep. He stood on the perimeter, eyes scanning the dark mountain passes. He could almost imagine shapes moving in the distance, shadows that didn't belong. At midnight, the silence was broken. A single flare shot into the sky from one of the forward watchposts. It burned red, the signal for danger. Shouts followed, boots pounding the frozen ground. Rail grabbed his rifle and ran toward the signal. When he reached the outpost, 2 of his men were missing. The others stood frozen, weapons shaking. One of them pointed toward the snow. There, illuminated by the dying glow of the flare, was a trail of deep claw marks, leading away into the night. They weren't random, they formed a straight line, as if something had deliberately taken its prey and vanished. Rael's stomach turned cold. This was no ordinary enemy withdrawal. They had stayed behind, unseen, picking off survivors one by one. And the worst part, whatever had taken his soldiers hadn't made a sound. Back at camp, the fear spread quickly, then whispered of unseen. Hunters, the prisoner, still bound, smiled with sharp, inhuman teeth when Rael passed by. You'll not see them until they wish to be seen, it hissed. Rael tightened his grip on his rifle. The last battle might have ended, but something far more dangerous had begun. He knew what had to be done. He would have to take a team into the mountains, track the hunters, and end them before they finished their work. The war was no longer about armies clashing. It was now about survival against an enemy that thrived. In the dark, and somewhere in the frozen peaks, the hunters were already moving, waiting, watching. The hunt had begun, under the glow of a pale blue star. The survivors of the human fleet drifted in silence. Hulls were scarred, engines flickered weakly, and entire decks were empty where friends once stood. Captain Mara Vance sat in the command chair of the Resolute, staring at the faint shape of the alien flagship disappearing into the void. War was over at least. That was what the galaxy would believe. Across the channels, voices carried the same emotion, exhaustion mixed with disbelief. Humanity had fought for years against the Kareth Dominion, a civilization older and stronger than any Earth had faced before. Billions had died. Worlds had burned, yet somehow humanity had stood its ground. The last battle was not a victory in the traditional sense. There were no cheers, no celebrations, but the Kareth fleet had withdrawn, their leaders silent, their banners gone from the skies. But in the quiet after the war, something else began to stir. The reports came first as whispers from scout ships, strange readings near the edges of human space, anomalies in the void, missing convoys, ships that sent a single distress ping before going silent. These were not the actions of the Esta. Kareth they were. Different. Colder. Admiral Rourke, aboard the warship Spearpoint, called it the Hunt. It's not a war, not an invasion, something worse. Something that did not announce itself, that struck from the dark and vanished before a counterattack could be mounted. Predators, he said, testing the herd before the kill. On Mars, the Council debated what to do. Resources were shattered after the war, fleets scattered, and civilian worlds begged for relief. But deep inside, classified meetings, intelligence officers showed maps of space with red marks spreading like stains. Each one a place where ships had vanished. The enemy, if it was one, was closing in, patient and precise. Captain Mara was called back to duty sooner than she expected. Her ship barely repaired, her crew still mourning, she received sealed orders from Earth Command: investigate the Sigma. Black anomaly. No escorts. No backup only. A stealth approach. The wording in the order was strange. Observe. Do not engage. If detected, retreat immediately. When Mara asked what they expected to find, the answer came in a single sentence. From the intelligence officer, if our analysis is correct, Captain, these are not the Kareth, and they are hunting something far worse than us. The Resolute left dock in silence, its engines whispering through the void. Every crew member felt the weight of the mission, the sense that they were stepping out of the light and into a place where even war had not reached. Days passed without incident until they reached the Sigma Black Sector.
Space here was wrong.
The stars seemed dimmer, as if something unseen was feeding on their light. Instruments flickered with false readings, and the crew reported hearing strange metallic hums in the corridors. Though the ship's systems detected nothing, then the signal came. It was faint, buried under layers of static, but it repeated at intervals 3 sharp pulses, a pause, then one long tone. It wasn't a distress call from any known civilization. It was older, colder. Mara ordered the signal isolated and amplified. What they heard made the bridge fall silent. It wasn't words. It was breathing, long, slow, deliberate breathing. The crew exchanged uneasy glances. Lieutenant Hale swore under his breath, insisting it was some kind of interference. But deep down, Mara felt the truth. Whatever was out here was alive, and it was aware of them. Hours later, the Resolute sensors picked up movement massive. Shapes drifting in the void, silent, without heat signatures. At first, they looked like asteroids. Then one of them moved, angling slightly toward the human ship. Another followed, and another. The asteroids opened, revealing vast metallic hulls unlike anything in the galactic records. Their designs were jagged, almost organic, as if grown rather than built. No lights. No markings, only the sense of something ancient and predatory. One of them released a sound into the void, a deep, resonant tone that shook the Resolute's hull. It wasn't communication. It was a call. The bridge lights flickered. Systems began to glitch, as if invisible hands were clawing at their electronics. Hale shouted that they were being scanned not with standard sensors, but with something biological. It felt invasive, like being looked through. Rather than at Mara, gave the order to retreat. But as the Resolute turned, the Predators didn't follow. Instead, they began to spread out into the darkness, ignoring the human ship entirely. When Mara understood they weren't here for humanity, they were tracking something else. Back on Earth, when the Resolute's report reached the highest levels of command, the Council went silent. The war with the Kareth had been terrible, but this was different, because in the Predator's path lay uncharted space where ancient records spoke of a sleeping weapon, a thing even the oldest galactic civilizations feared, and now it was awake. The stars were quiet, too quiet. After months of chaos, the galaxy's war fleets had gone silent, their engines cold, their weapons idle. But everyone knew the silence was not peace. It was the pause before something worse. Captain Alara stood on the bridge of the vigilant dawn, staring at the black void ahead. The battle at Draven's Rift had ended with the enemy retreating, but not destroyed. Somewhere out there, they were rebuilding. And she knew, deep in her bones, they were waiting for the right moment to strike again. A faint beep echoed across the bridge. "Commander, we're receiving a transmission," the comms officer said, his voice uneasy. "From who?" Alara asked. The officer swallowed. "Not sure. It's coming from outside known space." The sound that filled the speakers was not a voice, but a signal, a pattern of tones that felt too precise to be random. Each pulse carried an unnatural rhythm, like the ticking of a clock counting down. Ilara's eyes narrowed. Run it through the ciphernet. Minutes passed. The crew worked in silence, their faces pale under the glow of the displays. When the results appeared, the words sent a chill through the bridge. "We are not gone. We are behind you," the comms. The officer looked up, voice shaking. "Ma'am, this was sent on every channel and every known frequency, not just to us, the entire galaxy." For a moment, nobody spoke. The hum of the engines was the only sound. "They're taunting us," one of the officers whispered. "They want us afraid." Alara didn't answer. She had been in enough battles to know that enemies only sent warnings when they wanted to be found, or when they wanted you to go where they were waiting. "Track the source," she ordered. The nav officer frowned. "It's coming from the edges of the Ketheri expanse." Elaire's jaw tightened. The Ketheri expanse was a graveyard of ships, an uncharted stretch of space littered with ancient wrecks. No sane fleet entered it unless they had a death wish. But now, the signal was calling them there. Across the galaxy, other fleets had received the same message. Some ignored it, some prepared for battle. And some those who feared what might be hiding in the dark went into hiding themselves. On the vigilant dawn, Ilara made her choice. Set course for the signal's origin. All hands prepare for combat. Whatever's out there, we end it here. The ship's engines roared to life. The black stretched ahead like an open mouth. And in the distance, unseen in the void, something. Moved something that had been waiting since the last battle ended. The hunt was about to begin again. And this time, the galaxy wouldn't get another chance to recover.